If you've ever been told your dreams weren't good enough by the people who should have believed in you most, then you'll understand the fire that burned in my chest every single night for 2 years. Like, if this story resonates with you, comment below about a time someone underestimated you, because what happened next changed everything. My name is Sarah Elizabeth Thompson. I'm 31, and until last Tuesday at 6:47 p.m., I was the family disappointment. The one who threw away a perfectly good business degree to chase what my mother called unrealistic fantasies. The one whose restaurant my own relatives refused to eat at because it would embarrass the family name. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you how this all started, and why last Tuesday night, when my phone buzzed with a call that would change my life forever, I was standing in my tiny kitchen in Brooklyn, wondering if I'd made the biggest mistake of my life. Growing up in the Thompson family meant one thing: success was measured in corner offices, not kitchen corners. My father built a financial advisory empire in Connecticut. My mother ran the most exclusive interior design firm in Fairfield County, and my older brother Michael became the youngest vice president at Goldman Sachs by age 29. Then there was me, the kid who spent every Thanksgiving analyzing the herb blend in the stuffing instead of discussing portfolio performance. Sarah's always been artistic, my mother would say to her country club friends, the same way you'd describe a family member with a learning disability. She insists on this cooking thing, even though we've given her every opportunity to join something with real potential. When I was 11, I watched Julia Child make beef bourguignon on a Food Network rerun and knew, with the certainty that only a child can feel, that I wanted to create food that made people feel the way that dish made me feel. Safe, understood. Like everything would be okay if I could just take one more bite. My parents saw it differently. Cooking is a hobby, Sarah, not a career. Do you want to spend your life working weekends and holidays for minimum wage? But I couldn't shake it. Even at family Christmas dinners, where my cousins talked about their consulting jobs and investment banking offers, I found myself studying how Uncle Robert's face softened when he tasted my aunt's famous apple pie, or how Grandma Dorothy always went back for seconds of the green bean casserole, even though she claimed to be watching her figure. Food was a language I understood better than financial statements. The first time I tried to explain this to my parents, I was 14. I'd spent all afternoon making homemade pasta with a sauce I'd invented myself. A combination of roasted tomatoes, fresh basil, and a secret ingredient that took me 6 tries to perfect. "This is incredible, sweetie," my dad said, taking a second helping. "You're really talented." For a moment, I thought he understood. Then he added, "You should definitely keep this up as a hobby. It'll be great for entertaining clients when you're running your own firm someday." That's when I learned the difference between being appreciated and being understood. By high school, I'd learned to keep my culinary dreams to myself. I dutifully took AP Economics and AP Statistics, joined the debate team, and applied to business schools that would make my parents proud. But late at night, I'd sneak downstairs to experiment with flavor combinations, practicing knife cuts with the cheap set I'd bought with my babysitting money. "See? I knew she'd come to her senses," my mother told my grandmother during my graduation party from UConn. "Now she can apply to some real companies, maybe Deloitte. They love students with her GPA." The lie I told myself was simple. If I was successful enough at business, maybe my family would respect me enough to let me pursue cooking later. Maybe if I proved I wasn't a failure at practical things, they'd trust me with my actual dreams. So I got a job at a consulting firm in Manhattan. For 4 years, I analyzed market penetrations and optimized supply chains while my soul slowly died. Every morning, I'd walk past the Union Square Green Market on my way to the subway, watching real chefs select produce with a longing so sharp it felt like physical pain. My family was ecstatic. "Finally, Sarah's acting like an adult," Michael said during Easter dinner my 3rd year at the firm. "Though you should probably think about business school soon. Harvard would look great on the family wall." They didn't know that I'd spent every vacation day and weekend working for free in restaurant kitchens around the city, learning from whoever would teach me. They didn't know I'd saved every penny of my salary to eventually enroll in culinary school. They just saw their formerly difficult daughter finally living up to her potential. The breaking point came during my performance review in my 4th year. My manager, a woman named Jessica, who seemed to live on energy drinks and ambition, laid out a 5-year plan for my career that involved business school, then a fast track to partner. "You've got real potential, Sarah," she said, sliding a packet across her glass desk. "These are the MBA programs we recommend. With your track record here, you could probably get into Wharton." I stared at the packet, glossy brochures for schools that would take 2 more years of my life, followed by decades climbing a ladder I'd never wanted to be on, and something inside me snapped. "What if I said no?" I asked. "Excuse me?" "What if I said I didn't want to go to business school? What if I wanted to do something completely different?" She laughed, a sharp, surprised sound. "Like what? Sarah, you're 26. This is your career. You can't just throw it away on some quarter-life crisis whim." But as I sat in her office, surrounded by her awards and accolades for being everything I was supposed to want to be, I realized that staying would be the real waste of my life. When I turned 27, I couldn't pretend anymore. I'd been accepted to the Institute of Culinary Education in Manhattan, and I was going, with or without my family's blessing. The conversation happened during Sunday brunch at my parents' country club, surrounded by other families who all seemed to be celebrating normal achievements, promotions, engagements, graduate school acceptances. "This is financial suicide," my father said when I broke the news, his voice low but intense. "Do you know what you're giving up? Your salary, your health insurance, your retirement contributions? For what? To work in some hot kitchen for 12 hours a day?" "Cooking isn't a career path, it's a dead end," my mother added, not bothering to lower her voice. The family at the next table turned to stare. "Do you want to be poor your entire life? Do you want to never own a home, never have security?" But what broke my heart wasn't their practical concerns. It was the shame in their voices. Like I'd announced I was dropping out to become a circus performer or a street musician. "We supported you through college," my father continued. "We helped you get that job, and now you want to throw it all away to play chef?" "I'm not playing," I said quietly. "This is what I want to do with my life." My mother's face went cold. "Well, you'll do it without our help. We're not funding this fantasy." The worst part was the silence from Michael. My brother, who'd always been my closest ally, just sat there cutting his eggs Benedict into perfect squares, refusing to meet my eyes. Later, as we walked to our cars, I caught up with him in the parking lot. "You didn't say anything," I said. He stopped, keys halfway to his car door. "What did you want me to say, Sarah? That I think this is a great idea? That I think throwing away a 6-figure salary to attend trade school is smart?" "I wanted you to say you believed in me." Michael sighed. "I believe you're talented. I believe you're passionate. But passion doesn't pay rent, and I've seen what happens to people who follow their dreams without a backup plan. They end up bitter and broke." He got in his BMW and drove away, leaving me standing alone in a parking lot full of luxury cars, wondering if my family would ever understand that their definition of success felt like a prison to me. Despite everything, I enrolled at ICE. I liquidated my 401k, took out student loans that made me nauseous to think about, and moved into a studio apartment in Brooklyn that was smaller than my parents' walk-in closet. For the first time in my life, I was exactly where I belonged. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd never worked harder than I did in culinary school, but it never felt like work. 16-hour days that started with bread baking at 5 a.m. and ended with sauce practice at midnight felt like coming home. Learning to break down a whole chicken in under 3 minutes or master the perfect French omelette felt like unlocking secrets I'd been searching for my whole life. But my family saw it differently. When I graduated 18 months later, the only person in the audience was my grandmother Dorothy, who'd taken the train down from Boston despite being 81 and needing a walker. "I'm proud of you, sweetheart," she whispered as I received my diploma. "Food brings people together. Anyone who doesn't understand that is missing something important about life." She died 8 months later. I was the only family member who knew her. Last meal was the chicken pot pie I'd made her the week before, using her own recipe but with techniques I'd learned at school that made the crust impossibly flaky and the filling silk smooth. At her funeral, my mother gave a eulogy about Grandma Dorothy's practical wisdom and no-nonsense approach to life. She didn't mention that Dorothy had been quietly sending me grocery money every month, or that she'd kept every review and article about the restaurants where I'd worked taped to her refrigerator. After graduation, I worked my way up through some of the best kitchens in Manhattan. Line cook at a James Beard Award winner in the East Village, prep cook at a Michelin-starred French restaurant in Midtown, garde-manger at a farm-to-table place in Brooklyn that sourced everything within 50 miles of the city. I was learning, growing, becoming the chef I'd always dreamed of being. But I was also exhausted, broke, and starting to understand why my family had been so skeptical. Restaurant work was brutal, physically demanding, mentally exhausting, and financially unrewarding. I was working 60-hour weeks for less money than I'd made as an intern at the consulting firm. But I was also discovering something I'd never experienced in the corporate world: the pure joy of creation. The satisfaction of turning simple ingredients into something that could make a stranger smile. The rush of service, when everything clicked and the kitchen moved like a perfectly choreographed dance. At 29, I'd saved enough for a down payment on a small space in Williamsburg. Nothing fancy, 800 square feet, with a kitchen that barely met health code requirements, and 24 seats in a dining room that smelled like the Indian restaurant that had occupied the space before me. But it was mine. Sage, I called it, after the herb that had been in my first successful recipe as a kid. The menu would be American comfort food reimagined: mac and cheese made with aged Vermont cheddar and truffle oil, fried chicken brined for 24 hours and served with honey made by bees in upstate New York, desserts that captured the essence of childhood but with techniques that transformed familiar flavors into something extraordinary. It wasn't trying to be the next big thing in fine dining. It was trying to be the kind of place where people felt at home, where a Tuesday night dinner could become a special memory. I made the mistake of inviting my family to a soft opening 3 weeks before the official launch. I thought maybe if they saw what I'd built, tasted what I could create, they'd finally understand that this wasn't a phase or a hobby, but a calling. My parents drove down from Connecticut, along with Michael and his fiancée Amanda, my cousin Jennifer, who worked in marketing, and my uncle Dave, who owned a successful accounting firm. I'd spent 4 days preparing a 5-course tasting menu that represented everything I'd learned, everything I was. They arrived 15 minutes late, looking around the dining room like they'd accidentally walked into the wrong building. "It's charming," Amanda said, and somehow made charming sound like a terminal diagnosis. "Very Brooklyn," Jennifer added, taking a photo that I was pretty sure she wasn't planning to post anywhere. I started them with an amuse-bouche, a single spoonful of butternut squash soup with crispy sage and a drizzle of maple cream that had taken me 3 months to perfect. My parents stared at it like it might evaporate. "This is it?" my mother asked. "Where's the actual food?" "It's a tasting menu," I explained. 5 courses, each one building on... "5?" Michael interrupted. "How long is this going to take? Amanda and I have an early flight tomorrow." They picked at the soup. My father asked if I had any crackers. My mother wanted to know if I was sure the kitchen was clean. The second course was my signature dish, house-made gnocchi with short rib that had been braised for 14 hours, finished with a sauce that took me 8 tries to get right. Each piece of gnocchi was hand-rolled. Each portion represented 4 hours of work and cost me $18 in ingredients to make. "It's a little rich, don't you think?" Uncle Dave said after taking 2 small bites. "Real comfort food is simpler. This feels like you're overcomplicating things." Jennifer nodded. "Yeah, I had better pasta at that place in Little Italy last month, and it was way more affordable." By the third course, duck breast that I'd sourced from a farm in the Hudson Valley, and paired with farro that had been slowly cooked in duck stock, they'd stopped pretending to pay attention to the food entirely. So when are you going to start thinking about a real business plan? My mother asked as I placed the plate in front of her. This is a nice start, Sarah, but you can't sustain this on passion alone. Do you have investors? A marketing strategy? A plan for scaling? And the location, Michael added, waving his fork dismissively. Brooklyn is fine for artisanal coffee shops, but serious diners go to Manhattan. You'd need to be in Soho, maybe the Upper East Side, somewhere with actual foot traffic from people with disposable income. This isn't going to last through the winter, my father said matter-of-factly. I give you until New Year's. Then you'll need to think about getting back into corporate. I still have contacts at PwC who might take you back if you explain that this was just something you needed to get out of your system. I stood in my kitchen after they left, looking at 5 barely touched plates of food that represented everything I'd worked for, everything I was, $800 in ingredients, thrown away, 4 days of prep work, wasted. But worse than the food was the way they dismissed me, so casually. Like the past 3 years of my life had been an amusing detour that was finally over. That night, I called my best friend from culinary school, Marcus, and cried into the phone for 2 hours. They don't get it, he said, but the right people will. Great food finds its audience, Sarah. Just keep cooking. Despite everything, Sage opened on schedule in October. The first week was brutal. Some nights we had 2 customers, and I started calculating how long my savings would last at this rate. But slowly, word started to spread. A food blogger from Brooklyn Magazine came in and wrote a glowing review, calling my gnocchi transcendent and the duck a love letter to American ingredients. A few local chefs started stopping by after their shifts, which in the industry is the highest compliment you can receive. Month by month, our reservation book filled up. Eater NY mentioned us in a roundup of new restaurants to watch. The Village Voice food critic gave us 4 stars and called Sage a masterclass in elevated comfort food. My family didn't notice. They'd moved on from worrying about my restaurant to pretending it didn't exist. I hope none of my clients ask me about Sarah's little cafe, my mother said during my birthday dinner at a chain restaurant in Connecticut, because we know the food is consistent there. At least she's not asking us for money anymore, Michael added, though I still don't understand how she's covering her overhead. The truth was, I was barely covering my overhead. Every penny went back into the restaurant. Better ingredients, new equipment, training for my small but dedicated staff. I was living on leftover takeout and sheer determination, but I'd never been happier. Then things started accelerating in ways I couldn't have imagined. The critics who changed everything. 2 years after opening, Pete Wells from the New York Times came to Sage. I didn't know he was there. He came on a random Tuesday night in March, ordered off the regular menu, and left without saying a word to anyone. 3 weeks later, his review ran with the headline, "In Brooklyn, comfort food gets the respect it deserves." He called my cooking deceptively simple and utterly masterful, and said Sage was the kind of restaurant that reminds you why you fell in love with food in the first place. The phone didn't stop ringing for 3 days. Reservations started booking 2 months out. Food Network reached out about featuring us on a show about rising young chefs. Bon Appetit wanted to do a profile. My family's response? A text from Michael. Saw the Times review. Congrats, I guess. That was it. No phone call, no visit, no acknowledgement that their daughter and sister had just received one of the most coveted honors in American dining. It stung, but I was too busy to dwell on it. Sage was becoming something bigger than I'd ever dreamed, and I was running full speed to keep up. 2 months later, we got our first Michelin star. The star that changed everything. Getting your first Michelin star is like being struck by lightning, sudden, electric, and life-altering. The day the guide came out, my phone exploded with congratulations from chefs I'd never met, food writers I'd only read about, and customers who'd become part of our extended family. But the call that meant the most came from an unexpected source. "Sarah, this is Dorothy Williams. I was your grandmother's neighbor." I remembered Mrs. Williams, a tiny woman who used to sit on her porch and wave whenever I visited Grandma Dorothy. I wanted you to know that your grandmother kept a folder of everything written about you and your restaurant. Every review, every mention, even that little blurb in the local paper when you first opened. She was so proud, honey. She always said you were going to show them all. I hung up and cried in my office for 20 minutes. The Michelin star brought more attention than I'd ever imagined. Zagat named me one of 30 under 30 to watch. Food and Wine put me on their Best New Chefs list. James Beard Foundation nominated me for Rising Star Chef. But my family remained silent, radio silence. No congratulations on the Michelin star. No acknowledgement of the James Beard nomination. When Amanda posted about trying a cute little neighborhood place on Instagram, she'd come to Sage without telling me, she tagged a different restaurant entirely. 3 years of building something extraordinary, and they still couldn't bring themselves to acknowledge it. On a Tuesday morning in November, I was doing inventory when my sous chef Maria burst through the kitchen doors with her phone in her hand, tears streaming down her face. "Chef, you need to take this call," she said, practically vibrating with excitement. The phone showed a number I didn't recognize, but the voice on the other end made my knees buckle. "Ms. Thompson, this is David Chang from the Michelin Guide North America office. I have some extraordinary news." David Chang, not the famous chef, but the U.S. director of the Michelin Guide, the person responsible for the most prestigious restaurant ratings in the world. "Congratulations," he continued. "Sage has been selected to receive 3 Michelin stars in our 2024 New York Guide. You're the youngest female chef in American history to receive this honor, and only the 4th restaurant in Brooklyn to earn 3 stars. 3 Michelin stars, the highest possible rating. The dream of every chef who'd ever picked up a knife. Fewer than 200 restaurants in the entire world held this distinction. The official announcement will be made tonight at 6 p.m., David continued. "We'll need you at the press conference, of course, and I should warn you, your life is about to change dramatically." I hung up the phone and sat in my tiny office for 15 minutes, shaking. Maria found me there, staring at the wall covered in reviews and photos from the past 3 years. "Chef, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." 3 stars, I whispered. "Michelin just gave us 3 fucking stars." Maria screamed. Then she started sobbing. Then she ran into the kitchen screaming, and suddenly my entire staff was hugging and crying and laughing all at once. But the first person I called wasn't my publicist or my investors or the food writers who'd supported me from the beginning. I called my grandmother's old number, even though I knew it had been disconnected years ago. I just needed to tell her, somehow, that the little girl who used to help her make Sunday dinner had made it after all. That evening, my family was having their monthly dinner at my parents' house in Fairfield County. It was a tradition that had continued without me since I'd opened Sage. Apparently, my schedule was too unpredictable for them to plan around. I knew they were all there because Amanda had posted an Instagram story of their cocktail hour, complete with catered sushi from some trendy place in Greenwich and commentary about supporting real businesses. They had no idea what was about to happen. At exactly 6:47 p.m., while they were probably discussing Michael's latest bonus and Jennifer's new house, the Michelin announcement went live. My phone exploded. Text messages, calls, emails, notifications from every social media platform I'd ever joined. Food and Wine was calling. The Today Show wanted to book me. Anthony Bourdain's former producers were texting. But the call that mattered came 23 minutes later. "Sarah?" It was my mother's voice, but higher pitched than usual. There's something on the news about your restaurant?" In the background, I could hear my father's television tuned to NY1, where the anchor was saying my name. 3 Michelin stars, I said simply. Sage just received the highest honor in the culinary world. Silence, complete perfect silence. "I have to go," I continued. "Gordon Ramsay is on his way here for dinner, and there's a line of people outside that goes around the block. I'll talk to you later." I hung up and walked back into my kitchen, where my team was preparing for what would become the most important service of our lives. What happened next was controlled chaos. Word of the Michelin announcement had spread faster than we could have imagined, and despite our reservation system, people started showing up, hoping for any chance at a table. Gordon Ramsay did indeed arrive, without a reservation, with a small camera crew, and with the kind of intensity that makes seasoned chefs break into cold sweats. He ordered the full tasting menu and spent an hour in my kitchen afterward, discussing technique and asking about my grandmother's influence on my approach to comfort food. "This," he said, gesturing to a plate of my signature gnocchi, "is why we do this. You've taken food that speaks to the soul and elevated it to art. Brilliant work, chef." Coming from Gordon Ramsay, that was like receiving a James Beard Award and a Pulitzer Prize simultaneously. But the moment that broke me was smaller, quieter. An elderly woman, probably around the age my grandmother would have been, ordered a single portion of mac and cheese at the bar. She ate it slowly, reverently, then called me over. "This tastes like my mother's," she said, tears in her eyes, "but like she made it in heaven. Your grandmother would be so proud." I excused myself to the bathroom and sobbed for 10 minutes. The rest of the night was a blur of food critics, fellow chefs, and customers who'd waited hours just to taste something from a 3 Michelin star kitchen. We served more covers than we'd ever done, and somehow, impossibly, every dish that left the kitchen was perfect. At 2 a.m., after the last customer had left and the kitchen was finally clean, I sat at the bar with a glass of wine and looked around at the restaurant I'd built from nothing. 3 Michelin stars, the youngest female chef in American history to achieve this honor. And my family had learned about it from the news. The next morning, Sage was featured on the front page of the New York Post, the lead story on CNN.com, and trending on Twitter. My phone had 312 missed calls, and our reservation system had crashed from the volume of people trying to book tables. More importantly, my family started calling. Michael was first. "Hey, Sarah, I saw the news. This is, wow, congratulations. So, Amanda and I were wondering if you could get us a table soon. We have some clients who are really into the food scene." Then Jennifer, "Oh my God, Sarah, this is incredible. Can you hook me up with a reservation? I told my book club I know you and they're all freaking out." "Sarah, sweetheart, I'm so proud of you. I always knew you had it in you. Any chance you could cater my firm's holiday party?" My mother called last. "Sarah, we didn't realize it would become so. We're very proud of you. I've been telling everyone at the design center about my daughter, the celebrity chef." It should have felt like vindication. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt hollow. The real confrontation happened 2 weeks later at Michael's engagement party. My parents had invited me for the first time in 3 years, probably because having a 3 Michelin star chef in the family had suddenly become a valuable social asset. I showed up, but not for the reasons they expected. "Sarah!" my father boomed as I walked into their perfectly manicured backyard. "There's our celebrity chef, everyone! This is my daughter, the one with the 3 Michelin stars!" The irony was suffocating. 6 months ago, they'd been embarrassed to mention my restaurant. Now I was being paraded around like a prize they'd won. "Actually," I said, setting down the dessert I'd brought, individual chocolate soufflés that would have cost $32 each at Sage, "I wanted to talk to all of you about something." The conversation gradually died as people turned to listen. "For 27 years, I tried to earn your respect by being what you wanted me to be. I went to business school, worked in consulting, tried to fit into your definition of success. And you know what I learned?" I looked around at their uncomfortable faces, my parents, my brother, my relatives who'd spent years treating my dreams like an embarrassing hobby. "I learned that your love was conditional. You only supported me when I was conforming to your expectations. The moment I chose my own path, you wrote me off." "Sarah," my mother interrupted, "that's not—" "Let me finish." My voice was steady, calm. 3 years of running a kitchen during dinner rushes had taught me how to command a room. "Last month, when Sage received the highest honor in the culinary world, you all suddenly wanted to claim me again. But where were you for the 3 years I was building something from nothing? Where were you when I was working 18-hour days and living on ramen so I could afford organic produce?" Amanda shifted uncomfortably. Jennifer stared at her phone. The truth is, I don't need your approval anymore. I've built something beautiful, something that brings joy to people every single night. The New York Times called me a visionary. The James Beard Foundation is giving me an award. I have a reservation waiting list that's 8 months long. I picked up my purse. But more importantly, I have the respect of people who understand what I'm doing. My team, my customers, my fellow chefs, they see the value in what I've created. You just see a convenient way to impress your friends. Don't be dramatic, my father said. We're proud of you. We always have been. I laughed, a short, sharp sound that cut through the garden party chatter. You were ashamed of me. You told people I was wasting my life. You refused to eat at my restaurant because it would embarrass the family. Now that I'm famous, you want to take credit. I walked toward the gate, then turned back. Here's what's going to happen. Sage is booked solid for the next 8 months. We have a wait list of 30,000 people. If you want a table, you can call and make a reservation like everyone else. If you want a relationship with me, you can apologize. Really apologize for the years you spent telling me my dreams weren't good enough. Until then, enjoy telling people about your famous chef daughter. Just remember that I became famous despite you, not because of you. 8 months later, Sage moved to a larger space in Manhattan's meatpacking district. We now have 60 seats, a full cocktail program featuring drinks inspired by classic American desserts, and a 12-month waiting list for reservations. Food and Wine named me Chef of the Year. The James Beard Foundation gave me Outstanding Chef. I was featured on the cover of Time magazine with the headline, "The Chef, Redefining American Cuisine." My parents finally came to dinner last month, after calling 4 times to make a reservation and waiting 3 months for a table. They were polite, respectful, and clearly out of their depth in a restaurant where people make pilgrimages for my food. "This is incredible, Sarah," my mother said after tasting my newest creation, a deconstructed apple pie with brown butter ice cream and a crust made from heritage wheat that takes 12 hours to prepare properly. I had no idea you could... I never understood how sophisticated this all was. She trailed off, but I understood. She'd never seen my work as anything more than playing with food. Now she was seeing it the way the rest of the world did, as art. My father left a tip that was larger than what most people spend on groceries in a month. But the moment that mattered most came during dessert. My mother pulled out her phone and showed me a photo she'd taken of their table. "I wanted to remember this," she said quietly, "the first time I really understood what you've accomplished here." What? It wasn't exactly an apology, but it was acknowledgement. After all these years, they were finally seeing me. Michael came alone the following week. No Amanda, no agenda, just my brother wanting to understand what I'd built. "I owe you an apology," he said over coffee after his meal. "I thought you were being naive. I thought you were throwing your life away. I was wrong." He paused, looking around the dining room where every table was full, where people were clearly having experiences they'd remember for years. "I've been successful by every metric that matters to our family. I make good money, I have the right job, I live in the right neighborhood, but I've never created anything that matters to anyone but me. You've built something that brings joy to people every single day. That's pretty amazing." It was the first real conversation we'd had in 5 years. These days, I get asked a lot about the key to my success. Food writers want to know about my techniques, my inspiration, my vision for the future of American cuisine. But the real answer is simpler than that. I learned to stop trying to be who other people wanted me to be and started being exactly who I was meant to be. My grandmother used to say that good food is made with love, but great food is made with purpose. For too long, I thought that meant I needed to cook for people who would love me back. But what I learned is that the love has to start with yourself. You have to believe in your own dreams enough to pursue them, even when everyone around you thinks you're making a mistake. Sage isn't just a restaurant. It's proof that you can honor tradition while creating something entirely new. It's proof that success isn't about meeting other people's expectations, but about exceeding your own. Last week, a young cook staged with us for 3 days. She was 23, fresh out of culinary school, with stars in her eyes and burns on her hands from practicing knife cuts. "How did you know?" she asked on her last day. "How did you know this would work when everyone was telling you it wouldn't?" I handed her a bowl of the soup I'd been working on. A new dish inspired by my grandmother's chicken and dumplings, but elevated with techniques I'd learned from the best chefs in the world. "I didn't," I told her. "I just knew that not trying would have killed me slowly." She took a sip and her eyes widened. "This tastes like home and innovation had a baby." I laughed. That's exactly what I was going for. As I watched her walk back into the kitchen with new determination, I thought about that scared 27-year-old who'd walked away from a 6-figure consulting job to chase a dream everyone said was impossible. She'd been right to take the leap. Sometimes the only way to prove your dreams are possible is to make them come true, one perfect dish at a time. 5 years after receiving our 3 Michelin stars, I got a call that changed everything again. "Ms. Thompson, this is the Institute of Culinary Education. We'd like to offer you a position as a guest lecturer in our Entrepreneurship in Culinary Arts program." I would be teaching the next generation of chefs not just how to cook, but how to build something lasting, how to honor tradition while creating innovation, how to pursue their dreams even when everyone around them thinks they're crazy. My first lecture is next month. The title is From Family Disappointment to Michelin Stars, Building Success on Your Own Terms. In the audience will be kids just like I was, talented, passionate, and probably a little scared. Kids whose families might not understand their dreams, who are being told to be practical, to choose something safe. I'm going to tell them what I wish someone had told me. Your family's definition of success doesn't have to be your definition of success. Your worth isn't determined by other people's approval, and sometimes the best revenge against people who underestimate you is to succeed so spectacularly that they have no choice but to recognize your genius. But mostly, I'm going to tell them what my grandmother told me all those years ago. Good food is made with love, but great food is made with purpose. And when you cook with purpose, for yourself, for your craft, for the people who will truly appreciate what you're creating, magic happens. The kind of magic that turns a little cafe in Brooklyn into a culinary destination. The kind of magic that proves dreams can come true even when everyone says they won't. The kind of magic that tastes like vindication, served at the perfect temperature. The full circle moment. Just last week, something happened that would have broken me 5 years ago, but instead made me smile. I was at the Union Square Green Market, the same one I used to walk past during my consulting days, selecting produce for Sage's new spring menu. I was examining some early asparagus when I heard a familiar voice behind me. "Excuse me, aren't you Sarah Thompson, the chef?" I turned around to find a woman about my mother's age, perfectly dressed in the kind of designer outfit that screamed Fairfield County money. "I am," I said, wondering if this was going to be another request for impossible reservations or culinary advice. "I'm Barbara Whitman," she said, extending her hand. "Your mother and I serve on the museum board together." "Ah, one of my mother's country club friends." I braced myself. "I have to tell you," Barbara continued, "your mother talks about you constantly. She's so proud of what you've accomplished. She brings pictures of your restaurant to every meeting." For a moment I thought I'd misheard her. Pictures? Oh yes, photos of the dining room, the kitchen, articles about you from magazines. She even brought one of your cookbooks for the auction last month. Signed, of course. It went for $800. I stood there holding a bunch of asparagus, trying to process this information. My mother, who had spent years being embarrassed by my career choice, was now bragging about me to her friends. "She says you get your talent from your grandmother Dorothy," Barbara added. "Apparently, Dorothy always said you were going to be something special." After Barbara left, I stayed at the market for an extra hour, thinking about what she'd said. My mother had never apologized for the years of criticism, never acknowledged how much her lack of support had hurt me. But maybe this was her way of trying to make amends, publicly celebrating the daughter she'd privately dismissed for so long. It wasn't enough to heal all the wounds, but it was something. a small step toward understanding that families are complicated. Forgiveness is a process, and sometimes people show love in the only ways they know how. 6 months ago, I won the James Beard Award for Outstanding Chef, the highest honor in American dining. The ceremony was at the Lyric Opera in Chicago, and for the first time in years, my entire family was there. Not because I'd invited them, but because they'd bought their own tickets and flown themselves out to see me win. When my name was called, I walked to the stage past tables of the most celebrated chefs in America, holding an award that represented 20 years of dreaming and 5 years of proving those dreams possible. But the moment that mattered most wasn't standing on that stage. It was afterward, at the reception, when my father approached me with tears in his eyes. "I owe you an apology," he said without preamble, "a real one. Not because you're successful now, but because I should have supported your dreams from the beginning. You were brave enough to pursue what you loved, and I was too scared to let you." He paused, looking around the room full of chefs and food writers and industry professionals. "I spent my whole life building financial security, and there's nothing wrong with that. But you built something that feeds people's souls. That's a different kind of success, and it's beautiful." It was the conversation I'd been waiting for my entire adult life. My mother's apology came differently. Instead of words, she handed me a small wrapped package. Inside was my grandmother's rolling pin, the one I'd watched her use to make pie crusts and cookie dough, and the occasional rebellious batch of pasta when Grandpa wasn't looking. "She wanted you to have this," my mother said quietly. "I've been saving it for when I was ready to admit that she was right about you all along." I held that rolling pin, worn smooth by decades of use, stained with flour and memories, and felt something inside me finally heal. Today, Sage isn't just a restaurant. It's become a symbol of what's possible when you refuse to give up on your dreams. We've inspired dozens of young chefs to take risks, to trust their instincts, to cook with purpose rather than just profit. We started a scholarship program for culinary students from working-class families, funded entirely by profits from the restaurant. We partner with local farms to create a more sustainable food system. We've proven that a restaurant can be both artistically ambitious and socially conscious. But the thing I'm most proud of isn't the awards or the accolades or the waiting list that now stretches over a year. It's the letters I get from customers telling me about the anniversaries we've celebrated, the proposals that happened at table 12, the family dinners that became treasured memories because of a meal we prepared with love and purpose. It's the young cooks who stage with us and leave with the confidence to pursue their own dreams. It's the grandmother who brings her grandchildren for their first fancy meal and watches their faces light up when they taste something they've never experienced before. That's what great restaurants do. They don't just feed people, they create moments that matter. As I write this, I'm sitting in the office above Sage at 2 a.m., looking down at the dining room where tomorrow will serve another 60 covers of food that represents everything I've learned about cooking, about business, about life. Next month, we're opening our second location. Not a carbon copy of Sage, but a different concept entirely. A casual neighborhood spot that serves the kind of food I grew up eating, elevated just enough to honor the ingredients, but accessible enough that families can come for Sunday dinner without breaking the bank. We're also launching a line of packaged goods, sauces and spice blends, and pasta, made using the same techniques we use in the restaurant, so people can bring a piece of Sage into their own kitchens. And yes, I'm working on a cookbook. Not a vanity project filled with impossible recipes, but a real guide to cooking with purpose, filled with stories about food and family and the courage it takes to follow your dreams. The little girl who used to help her grandmother make Sunday dinner has become a chef who feeds people across the country. The consulting analyst who felt dead inside every morning has become an entrepreneur who employs 47 people and serves as a mentor to dozens more. The family disappointment has become the family success story. But more than any of that, I've become exactly who I was always meant to be. If I could go back and talk to that 27-year-old woman standing in her boss's office, staring at those MBA brochures and wondering if she was brave enough to walk away from everything secure and predictable, I'd tell her this: the people who truly love you will eventually come around. The people who don't aren't worth your time anyway. And the dreams that feel impossible are usually just dreams that require more courage than most people are willing to invest. Your family's fear doesn't have to become your reality. Their definition of security doesn't have to be your definition of success, and their inability to see your potential doesn't diminish your worth. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for the people you love is to succeed so completely that they have no choice but to question their own assumptions about what's possible. Sometimes the best way to honor your ancestors is to build something they could never have imagined. Sometimes the only way to find your family is to stop trying to be who they want you to be and start being who you actually are. And sometimes the greatest revenge against people who underestimate you is to succeed so spectacularly, so completely, so undeniably, that their lack of faith becomes irrelevant. Because at the end of the day, success that's built on other people's approval is hollow. But success that's built on your own dreams, your own hard work, your own refusal to give up, that's the kind of success that sustains you. That's the kind of success that tastes like freedom. The final service. Every night, as we finish service and clean the kitchen and turn off the lights, I take a moment to stand in the dining room and remember what this all started as: a dream that everyone said was impossible, pursued by a woman who refused to believe them. Tomorrow we'll do it again. We'll serve food that tells stories, that creates memories, that brings people together around tables where they'll laugh and cry and celebrate and mourn and fall in love and make peace and simply exist in the moment, nourished by something created with purpose. And that's enough. That's everything. The family disappointment became a 3 Michelin star chef. The woman who was told her dreams weren't good enough created something that brings joy to thousands of people. The girl who used to help her grandmother make Sunday dinner grew up to feed the world. That's a story worth telling. That's a life worth living. That's a dream worth fighting for, no matter who tells you it's impossible. Have you ever been underestimated by the people who should have believed in you most? Share your story in the comments below. And remember, the best response to doubt is undeniable success. Like and subscribe if this story reminded you that your dreams are worth fighting for, no matter who tells you they're impossible. Because sometimes the greatest victory isn't just achieving your dreams, it's proving wrong everyone who said you couldn't.